Welcome to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Hannah O'Brien, both a veteran spouse and the program manager for the Veteran Spouse Network. On each episode of our show, I will host different guests to learn more about the stories, unmet needs, and resources available to our military and veteran families. We're the show that's making space for your stories, so that here you know you're never alone. Welcome back to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast. As military and veteran spouses, we oftentimes find ourselves navigating systems that aren't designed with us in mind. We've all too often heard that if the military wanted you to have a spouse, they would have issued you one. And while things have certainly come a long way in that regard, both in the active duty and post-service support ecosystems, spouses often find themselves fighting tooth and nail for answers, support, etc. The systems are often complicated by design and not created equal across branches, installations, VA hospitals, clinics, etc. Military and veteran spouses are no strangers to navigating these complex systems, and they are definitely some of the most resourceful people I've ever met. They are also the biggest advocates for their service members, their veterans, their families, their fellow spouses. But that doesn't mean it's easy or that it doesn't weigh on us. And it's exhausting, in fact, and with things constantly changing and information not being openly shared, it can get all too easy to want to give up and accept a reality that doesn't have to be. It's hard to know where to begin, and it's hard to know what to do when a door is closed in your face. And that's why I'm so grateful to have Marissa Muntain as my guest today to talk about her experience. And I won't jump the gun and tell her story for her, but she joins us today to share how she navigated the Air Force's Exceptional Family Member Program, more commonly known as the EMFP program, and how she was able to advocate for herself and her family. So, Marissa, I'd love to turn it over to you to have you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll get into your story.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was born and raised in Boise, Idaho, and that's where I met my husband, who flies in the F-15 Strike Eagles, while he was stationed at Mountain Home. We have been married a little over 3.5 years now, and that has been just such a great adventure, so much fun. And we just recently found out that we're pregnant. So super exciting. We're excited to get kind of our family started, and we also have a new puppy, so lots going on.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I graduated from Boise State with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and a minor in business, and have really enjoyed working as an RN, and just kind of the advocation and learning that I've had with that has been really amazing for not only patients, but also for myself.
hmm hmm Well, congratulations. That's such an exciting time for you and your
Thank
husband.
you. Yes.
Yeah. So thinking about what we're here to talk about, I think knowing that our listeners come from all different walks of life and may not know, I certainly didn't know what the EMFP program was, meeting my husband after service had ended. So for those who might not be familiar, let's kind of set the stage and let us know what is the EMFP program, and not just what it is on paper, but kind of what it means for families in real life, like in terms of what that program exists to do for them.
Yeah. So it's the EFMP program and it's Exceptional Family Member Program. So I can only speak on the Air Force's
Mhm.
perspective, because obviously that's the branch that we're in and kind of my experience. But I think it's somewhat similar throughout the military. I do know that it has recently changed a lot over the last couple of years and has been up actually. There have been quite a few issues. It's been up in congressional hearings, things like that. Ideally, it is a great program. It's meant to ensure care for any and all conditions, medical conditions. So, on paper, it's really just there to kind of support anybody having any special circumstances. However, it is kind of a black and white program, which most people within the medical world know that most medical conditions, you know,
Mm.
are not black and white. There's a huge spectrum. And so one size does not fit all. And that's kind of what we sort of came up against. When you're going to PCS with your spouse, specifically overseas, again, it is a little bit different, I think, between if you're just going to another stateside base, but specifically from our experience trying to go overseas to England, We had to submit all of our medical paperwork, which seems very normal. And at that point, there's a special needs coordinator at each base that is going to review your documents and kind of decide if you need to be put on the EFMP program. So it used to not be mandatory. This was one of the changes, at least again for like Air Force. You used to be able to have a say of whether you wanted to get that additional help and care, but it has changed and no longer is an option. And if they deem that you need to be on it, you have to be on it.
Which is a huge change. And I
Um,
was even in talking about us doing this interview with some of my coworkers who were military spouse or were with their partner while they were active duty. Like they weren't even aware of some of these changes to that.
yeah,
So,
it's really shocking. I mean, throughout this process, and I'll get kind of more into it a little bit later on, but I was able to reach out to a lot of different people on EFMP throughout the US and then also stationed outside of the US. And it was pretty shocking, just the vast, kind of, I don't know, the program is very different depending on where you are. And I think a lot of that does come down to the special needs coordinator. But I mean, I talked to people who were getting denied from going overseas for things like acne or eyeglasses prescriptions. There was somebody that I talked to that had medical documentation from when their child was like 3 months old and had a special formula,
mm,
and it was now 5 years old and no longer had not been on
on
formula for
formula. Yeah.
years, and they were getting denied for, yeah, or inaccurate medical records that sometimes it depends on your special needs coordinator, but they don't always really dive in. They kind of just again see it as black and white and, oh, you have this or this, so you're probably not going to be eligible to go. And even weird situations. I talked to a family where the mom and the son both had the exact same diagnosis with ADHD. They'd been on the same exact medication for years. The son was getting close to 18. This was no new diagnosis. The mom had been on it for years. And they were trying to go overseas. I can't remember. I think it was somewhere in England as well. And the son was approved, but the mom was not approved, and it was over the exact same medication and situation. So it's just kind of strange. It depends on the day, I think, that your
Oh
stuff
my
is getting
gosh.
reviewed. And then there's the opposite end of it as well, where there were people I talked to that desperately needed, support and medical care, and they were at bases that they could not get that specialty care, or they were driving. There was somebody that was driving 97 miles, I believe it was, 3 times a week to get the care that they needed, because they were in a fairly remote area. So I think that's the thing with EFMP is the heart is really, really great. And I don't want to, make this about bashing on the military in any way. I just think that sometimes there are programs within that, like you said, just, serve you sometimes and sometimes don't. And I think with something like this, if it's going to be mandatory, and there's no longer a choice, it can't be serving the people 50% of the time.
Absolutely.
Um, I think that's I think that is just kind of a disservice to the military and their family members. And there's just so much more, like I said, and to every medical condition. So
Yeah, no, I think that's yeah, the spectrum and really you have to understand what's going on for each individual and what they need to actually make the right decision. And it sounds like too often it's seems like really arbitrary.
yeah,
Whatever
yeah,
mood somebody was in that day or whatever we might have missed on, some paperwork or the conversation we didn't have, which I know we're gonna talk about more. But I liked what you said. The heart of the program is good, right? Like if I were to sum up kind
yes,
of what you said, it's like the intention of the program is to help military families, kids, spouses, etc., make sure that when they're getting moved elsewhere that they have the support that they need for whatever
exactly.
health and mental health conditions they may have. So
Which
that's
I
the
think is
point.
amazing. I think that's
Yeah,
amazing,
right.
that like the military, that they are caring, and that they're having, that it doesn't just mean that everything has to go out the door if your family member is in the military. So I love that. And I think that there are ways this program can certainly improve, but I do love the heart behind it, especially as a registered nurse.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I know you have a unique perspective as you're navigating this. So, okay, so let's talk about your experience. So, I think you mentioned already your husband got orders or the opportunity to go to England, and that's kind of where your journey starts with this program. So tell us what happened.
Yes. So my husband got orders to England, and we were obviously over the moon about it. That was our first choice. If we were going to have to move, we wanted to go to England. So when you get, like I said, when you get orders for overseas as the dependent, of course, you submit all of your personal medical records. And I submitted all of mine. I had no hesitation when I submitted it. My husband was deployed at this point. This was early 2025. So I was kind of navigating this on my own and sort of very naive to the process. I submitted my notes, like I said, and then kind of just went on about my life and was just planning again on the move in a few months. And so I was really surprised when a few weeks later, it is kind of a slow process. Sometimes you'll wait 2, 3, 4 weeks or more to get a response or to have an update on something with this. And so a few weeks after I submitted everything, I got an email from the special needs coordinator at the base I was at. And he basically said that he needed more information because in my medical notes there was a mention of going to a counselor. And so again, I was like, okay, yeah, no worries. I realized that most likely he had read through my PCP's notes at my annual wellness visit, and I had mentioned to her that I had gone to a counselor a few times, that I had enjoyed it, it had been a good experience. The previous year to that had gone through a really difficult situation where one of my really close family members went into the ER with stomach pain, came out with stage 4 cancer, was supposed to have weeks to live, ended up living for about 5 months, maybe a little bit more. And so if anybody knows about hospice, a lot of times that care is not around the clock. There's check-ins once a week or here or there, but I really helped this person, and just it was quite the heartbreaking situation, something that I had really never gone through. And so at that point I decided I wanted to go to some counseling. I'm totally open to like discuss that, and had zero issues with it, and just wanted to be my best, wanted to be able to go into work and not be seeing other sad things and just being down. It's just hard life things. So went to counseling. It was great. And then I was finished with the counseling. And so, with this program, something that I didn't know is if you have gone to counseling for 6 months or more, so even 7 months or 8 months, and if you've gone more than one time a month. So I was going about every other week, and then there was times where I was going once a month. It was kind of just I was kind of just here and there, kind of popping in. At first, it was a little bit more consistent, about every other week, but then more sporadic as it went on. It didn't matter because I had gone to a little bit over 6 months of counseling. So I was told that I had to get on EFMP. And at that point, again, I really had no idea what this program was. So I said, yeah, of course, signed up. I took my paperwork. There's a form called the DD 2792 form. And I took that to my primary care provider. She filled it out for me. I had no clue how like in depth I needed to be, or how wording like mattered on such an extreme level. She filled it out for me, and I took that in. And shortly after that, he kept asking for my personal counseling notes, which I felt was really, really strange. I felt like it was very invasive. You go in for an hour out of your month, or maybe you're an hour every 2 weeks, and there's so much more to your life. You're going to discuss like grief or maybe some anxiety that you had surrounding the whole process. And then, that's the whole picture that's being painted for you. And so that was really tricky. I talked with the counselor. She was like, that's very strange. That seems sort of against HIPAA. Who is this person? And I'm like, well, it's a contracted out employee for, the military. And he's going to, I guess, read through my files and decide if I'm good to go or not. Like, I don't know. I've never met him. He's
Right.
hard to get a hold of, things like that, where I didn't really feel super confident in just handing over whatever, because I didn't even know what my notes were. I mean, sometimes,
Right.
they're very like there's very in-depth things. Sometimes it can paint a picture and be like, yeah, this is what's going on. And yeah, I'm sad right now, but it doesn't mean I'm a depressed person.
Yeah.
Like, or, and yeah. So, but anyways, ended up eventually submitting my notes, which the EFMP special needs coordinator told my husband actually at a later time that they were very vanilla. But not only did I submit those, I had a letter from my primary care provider, and I had a letter from the counselor I had seen. And they both mentioned in there that they would be willing and able to answer any questions on my behalf. Give us a call. She's completely stable. Obviously, I've been with my primary care provider for years. So this was like she definitely knew me and knew where I was at. But their phones never rang. They never received any calls. And pretty much everything, despite him even, admitting that my files were vanilla, he didn't look for anything further. He didn't ask any questions. And so that was frustrating because shortly after that ended up getting a denial and saying that I would not be able to go to England with my husband because there would be no resources available. So I was shocked. I was like, oh man, I've always heard that Europe has like great mental health care. If I ever need
Mhm.
anything, again, I was not seeking like any further treatment. Um, so I was really surprised at that. But again, you are put on this program. And what I was told by my special needs coordinator at the time was that you're on it for 5 years after your last visit in case anything comes up. So again, very black and white, because if I had been in counseling for 10 years and, my situation was a little different, then that would make more sense that maybe I would need more of that help. But when it was situational and it was such a short period of time, it was kind of shocking that that would be kind of following me around forever.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, all that to be said, they said no resources were available. So I ended up reaching out to all of the counselors in the surrounding area to where we were going to be. And I emailed 16 different offices, kind of just took it upon myself because I was like, I don't really believe this. I also have multiple friends who are getting regular counseling in England that I know right now who have had zero issues getting in. So I emailed them within 5 hours. I had 8 responses of people willing to accept me. And then over the next 24 hours, multiple other um, responses came in. And I brought that information in. When I brought that information in, then I was told that it didn't mean I could be seen very quickly. Like, yes, maybe they could get me in, but it may just be like a first. I can't remember. It's a little bit different in just how they worded it with
Yeah.
being over in Europe, but that it would be like my intake appointment or
Hmm.
something like that, and it would just be the initial, and then they wouldn't be able to see me maybe for months. So I went and I even made an appointment, again, not seeking counseling, but made an appointment to prove like that there was availability for the week after I was supposed to get there. And I brought that. And then he said, yeah, that doesn't mean again that you can be seen regularly, even though you got this appointment. So then I had to go back in another email and say, I need in writing that I can be seen on a regular basis. Would you guys be able to see me every other week? Um, if that's what I needed. And they responded back immediately and said, yep, we have all the space, and we would be able to do that and take you on full time. So um, that was shocking then when I brought all of that and continued to just hear that there were no resources available. I just don't know why, it was so easy for me to just reach out. I know they're busy. I know that, there's always things changing, but people are coming and going from England all the time. Within the military, it's not like it's just more and more people building up. And there's also so many other options. Unfortunately, I did not know about it at this point. I didn't know that I needed to be ready to go to war with every possible
Right.
option. I literally thought that this program was there to help make sure resources were available. And if I proved that, then okay, great, you're good to go. There's no reason to hold you back. It was disheartening because I had a friend who has a condition that's a fairly unique and complex situation. And they told her originally that she was denied because she wouldn't be able to get in for 9 months. She proved that she would be able to get in and made an appointment. And then her appeal was approved and they were able to move, but hers had nothing to do with mental health.
Yeah.
So it's just it's frustrating the stigma that mental health still has, and obviously we can get more into that later. But it's just, it again, it's frustrating when the military seems to be so pro mental health, and then you like go for a handful of sessions, and now your husband can't move to a base that's fairly close to London and all of that. And then on top of that, I think what's hard is that you you don't know going into this that there are options like One Source Military, where
Yeah.
you get 12 free sessions per year per issue. Or where, I mean, it was 2025 at the time. So, how did we all get through 2020 with COVID? There was so much telehealth. There were so many options. Telehealth is definitely an option in England. And when I opted to even pay out of pocket, because I was coming up with everything, I was like, I will pay out of pocket if I desperately need a counselor. Everyone's full, there's not a single person in all of England. I will pay out of pocket to Zoom or whatever my counselor back in Idaho
Yeah.
that I saw. And we even included that in my appeal. So I think that was really hard because it was just never addressed. It just always came back that resources weren't available. When I asked the special needs coordinator if he would reach out and ask that on my behalf to the special needs coordinator in England, he said that he just had to take them at their word, and this is just kind of what it was, and he didn't know what it was
That's
really
how it
like in
is.
England. And that's just, that's really hard to take when you they are your, like, basically your point of contact, and there's no one else that you can talk to within that. I did try to stay up, and I waited multiple nights till 1:30 in the morning, and it was like 8:30 in England. And I called to try my friend that lives in England at the base. Got their phone number because it's very hard also to find any information about the special needs coordinator
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
you look into it. And so she found their number and got it. And I called, and then I was immediately redirected back to my special needs
Mm.
coordinator and said that everything had to go through him. So, like, they couldn't even talk. So you're really dependent on what your special needs coordinator does for you. And um, whether they're having, a good day, whether they want to go above and beyond and really advocate and help, or whether this is just a job to them and they've been doing it for a while and it is what it is. It could matter less to them. So
Mm.
I think all are not equally invested, but that was kind of the gist. It went on a little bit farther, but then we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of our situation. So frustrating. Hard
In
to just, yeah.
incredibly frustrating. And you're like pulling out the themes for me because there's so much like to digest, and that are these things that, I mean, I know from talking to you, you mentioned some of this, but having talked to other people, right, that you were hearing other people deal with too.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but we've heard these stories, whether it's about the EMFP program, whether it's other things going on in the DoD system. We hear it all the time, too often in the VA system as well. Um, and that there's so much variability in quality of care and rules, and
Yes.
how things are done depending on where you are, your branch, like all these sorts of things.
Hmm.
So I guess maybe that's a good place to start, is kind of with the system itself. And like the more you learned as you poured yourself into trying to figure out how to make, what was going on and how to advocate for yourself and your family, what were some of kind of these biggest inconsistencies or like misinformation you encountered as you learned more about how your experience compared to others?
There were a lot of inconsistencies, and that was another really frustrating thing because some of my supporting documents even included like emails with or texts, both with friends or people that I knew in England that were getting regular care and were like sharing their experience. Like I wanted to show and prove, yes, like these people, you can look them up, like they're in your like they are getting the care. This is not an issue. So there are a lot of inconsistencies. I found inconsistencies even within the same med group at the base I was at. I
Wow.
would get an answer from one person. So I at one point I was really, really, again, shocked that I would have to submit every personal counseling note. I didn't know what those looked like, whether it was how in depth or again, stuff can just kind of not be a full representation when you're going in for an hour out of your month.
Mhm.
And so I didn't know what it was gonna, if it was like, well, she's really sad today. Are they gonna twist that and spin it? I can't even get a meeting with this person. So am I gonna explain that like, no, I'm not depressed and on the brink of, a disaster. So I ended up reaching out to another person within the med group, and they actually confirmed to me that I only needed to submit what was sent to insurance from my counselor, which includes your date of the visit, your date of birth, your full name, your diagnosis, so like grief or anxiety about the situation or whatever, and then the billing code.
Wow.
So I had that information from one person within the same building. Meanwhile, the special needs coordinator was like, nope, I need every note to be able to go through and read. And so, kind of hearing even just on that level, like I would get one answer from one person and then another answer from another. It was very, it just sort of seemed like, there just wasn't a lot of, I don't know what you would call it, but just not everyone wasn't on the same page,
Yeah,
you know?
clearly.
There are also, obviously, like I said, inconsistencies in special needs coordinators. And of course, you're going to have that with any field. So you're going to have people that really want to do a great job in what they're doing. And then you'll have people that are just truly there to like clock out as soon as they can and get a paycheck. I think the special needs coordinator position is like, can be a very sensitive one. And if that's you, it's probably not a good fit.
Mhm.
But how they kind of run their program and the level of effort they put in is vastly different. So I was talking with some of my friends that actually left from North Carolina to go to England or go to other bases. Like they had such a great experience where their special needs coordinator helped them. So there are a lot of different AFI regulations that kind of you're supposed to go by, and that's what we as like dependents or active duty members can refer to for what the base believes in or like kind of their standards. And so there are even AFI regulations within like the EFMP program. And one of those is that the special needs coordinator is supposed to assist you in writing your appeal after you've been denied and kind of helping you understand what you need to bring to the table. I had friends that had that sort of help, whereas I didn't even know that was an option until way too late. I'd already submitted my appeal. I didn't have exactly what I needed or the wording, I guess. So things like that really would have changed my situation. And then also there's just a difference in level of medical knowledge with special needs coordinators. So the one that I was dealing with is a contracted employee who had a background in social work, but again had kind of been in this sort of position for years, just kind of not being active in that field as much and being out there as an active counselor or being involved in mental health, but kind of just, pencil pushing by at their desk, and kind of just going through the motions. So I think that plays a big role because, yeah, it just does. And then I think as well, another big thing that, yeah, was really different was that a lot of bases do interviews and evaluations. And I've heard sort of a mixed response on this, that some bases have gone away from that. They're no longer doing interviews and evaluations, which I think is a huge crime.
Mm.
But at the base I was at, the current AFI reg said that when somebody was being considered for EFMP, the first thing that you do is you get an interview and evaluation. So whether or not that AFI reg was updated online, I don't know. But as far as I could tell, that was still the current regulation for that base. And I never to this day have met the special needs coordinator. I tried to make a meeting with him. That meeting was canceled by him. Again, a lot of this I didn't know. I didn't know I had a right to an interview and an evaluation until past the point of all of my information had already been given and he had no context for my situation. So that's a really huge thing. And I think if somebody's going to go to bat for you or be an advocate for you or actually know the resources you truly need, they need to have context. Your primary care providers or your specialists need to be looped in, and their medical knowledge should not be dismissed, or if questions are on the table, then they should completely be, you know, reached out to,
Yeah.
because this person doesn't even, I mean, this guy had never even met my husband at this point, let alone me. So I think that was really hard. And then I just think, yeah, like I mentioned, kind of AFI regs can be a little bit different at different bases. And some people are probably really on top of it and making sure that they're all updated and people can refer back to those. Maybe others are not as on top of it and their rules from a year ago. But regs do vary a little bit, so that can kind of change maybe what your rights are, or um, how the program is handled. So those are just some of the kind of differences and inconsistencies. But I think the biggest one really comes down to how much the special needs coordinator cares, and how they're going to package your information, because that is a huge part of how this all goes for you. Because they're going to put in whether they recommend you for travel or they don't recommend you for travel, and kind of, again, be either willing to ask questions and advocate for you on your behalf and say, hey, no, she found all these resources. Can you confirm they're not available? Like, where are you getting that? I mean, that's just not questions I could ask, or I would have.
No, no. And I think like the other piece of this that like you just spoke to a little bit, but that I think it's really important for people to remember is like that this is like preventing you guys from going from PCSing. Like this is preventing your
Mhm.
husband. Because I think when we talked too, right, this was like really good thing for his career, right?
Mhm.
To be able to
Yeah.
go.
So, yeah, it is. And I think within the F-15 community, that it's a fairly tight and small community. So there are like three main bases that the F-15 Strike Eagle people go to. And my husband has gone and done an additional training for 6 months. Essentially, it's called weapon school.
Mm.
And so they call them patches after they've gone through this, and it's a pretty rigorous program. It's basically like Top Gun, but it's instead of a few weeks, it's for 6 months, and you apply, and it's a whole process and getting in, and it's just a very intense program. So my husband's willing to, go above and beyond. This is by no means required. This is not a normal upgrade within his jet, but this is to go and become a, just, I mean, truly just not, I don't want to be like a master. Of course, they're always learning, they're always growing,
Yeah.
but like to really, really like max out your learning and to be an asset, within this community. And so they spread out the patches, that's what they call them, when you graduated, throughout these different bases. And then sometimes within like different test communities and things like that, which I don't fully understand because we've never done that. But and so anyway, it had been well known for quite a while that this is where they were going to put my husband, and that he was the next like patch that was going over there. They have a certain number because the patches really help in kind of getting everybody like ready to deploy and getting everybody. I mean, it's a whole team effort. So it's
Yeah.
not just the patches. Of course, I mean, you don't have to be going to weapon school to be valuable, right? But it's just something extra that he's done. and
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so where they end up being PCSing is much more kind of thought out, I guess.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think like at the crux of it, it's something that was good, that he was being asked to
Hmm.
do, wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important
Hmm.
to remember is like because then of this decision, again, getting back to like this theme of like this one person
Hmm.
made this decision for y'all, and essentially what the position you're put in is either he doesn't go or he goes without you. Like,
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of what it is either we're going to be denied based off of this or he's going to have to go over solo essentially. And then there were like some minor loopholes of things that you could like as a spouse, I don't even really understand. And I know that they don't typically like to do it anymore, but you can kind of go over after the fact, some
Mm.
like through the back door type of thing. I don't really know, but it really wasn't like a viable option.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was what was going to happen.
So, and like, I know people throw this word a lot around a lot, but like when I hear this, I'm like, this guy, this coordinator was like gaslighting you. Like this, like by
Yes.
definition, that's like what was happening. It's one thing to be like, oh, it's up for interpretation or whatever, but when you're like throwing so much concrete like evidence, at them and just being told, well, no, 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 no. So it is insane, how much one person, um, was able to impact, the future of you and your husband's lives. So like how did that alone, like just how did that like kind of affect y'all, you and then, just I know there's no way it
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, no, it definitely affected us in a huge way because we were at the point. I mean, there's a lot of instability within the military. And when you get to the point of thinking that there is stability, especially when it's only three main bases. So it's not like we're going to randomly just happen to end up where they'll need him to be in Nebraska, just random. Like it's pretty certain once you have your assignment, as long as everything goes through again on like the spouse's part. And so, yeah, it was very shocking. It was shocking to see just how much power he had. And surprising that there were not more checks and balances. I think there was
Right.
so much just going off of whatever he said. When I tried to reach out to the patient advocate at the base that we were at, I left a voicemail because she didn't answer and basically just gave a brief synopsis. And I could tell when she called me back that she had gone and talked to this special needs coordinator and that he was pretty much done with me at this point. I'm sure he was so beyond annoyed because I think a lot of people don't know their rights. They don't really dive in and they're just kind of like, okay, I guess I
Have to.
can't go, or maybe they don't even have like the energy and time to put into looking into
Yeah.
it. And so, but I was kind of fighting back with it and like, help me understand what's not available. Help me. This is completely changing the trajectory of everything we thought we were going to be doing. And so she ended up telling me that, she said something along the lines of, well, you know what they say, once you're in the military, you're just government property. And I just like died in that moment because I know historically there have, people have said things like that or that you just belong to the government now and whatever, but it was 2025 at the time and this wasn't just like they needed my husband to go somewhere else because they just needed him. We were being denied because of completely incorrect, people weren't looking into the situation. We were just being denied. And so that was like very disheartening. And I knew as soon as she said that and that she kind of just defended the special needs coordinator, she didn't even ask or really offer any sort of guidance or help or what she would do. Um, yeah, I knew that they'd already talked. My name is probably getting thrown around in here. I don't know what this guy's saying. I can't meet with anybody at this point. I wasn't able to meet with anyone in person. Mostly they just wanted to talk to the active duty member, which again, like I said, my husband was deployed in the Middle East, having way more important things to focus on, but having to be on the phone with me as often as possible to try to navigate this. I mean, that this should have been the last thing that was on his plate when
Right.
he was doing what he was doing. But instead, because this guy could not even answer my questions and people wanted to just speak to the active duty member, my husband's having to be pulled away from some really important things to try and figure this out. But anyway, all that to be said, it was shocking that this guy could kind of paint whatever narrative, and I don't understand it. I think truly, my husband's commander that he had at the base for his squadron, and then the commander of the squadron he was supposed to go to in England were both kind of sending emails, trying to help out, do what they could. And I think this guy just started to feel maybe like pressed and like he kind of just had to dig his heels in and
Mhm.
paint, whatever story he want. I don't know. I
Yeah.
still am like, it
What
would have been
happened?
so much easier. Yeah, it would have been so much easier for him to just like ask these questions on his own, or help us than what it turned into.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, we haven't even talked to about fully what it turned into. Um,
Yeah.
but a lot so far already.
Hmm.
I feel like the other thing, and you alluded to this earlier, that's well, not unique, whatever unique about this is a theme for sure, is the mental health portion of this, that you were getting,
Hmm.
this was all about your access to mental health care that you weren't even trying to access anymore.
Yeah.
So it was more about your history of access to mental health care. And then you
Hmm.
alluded to kind of how we all know that there's stigma, a mental health stigma in the military, and they've done a lot of work in various regards, but then you see stuff like this happening. So, can you tell us more about kind of just how this experience like impacted your own mental health, and then also just like how you feel like this is just kind of perpetuating, or how you see this show up in mental health stigma in military families in general?
Yes, I think the stigma is still huge. I think it's really sad. And after going through this, I could fully confirm, at least for the base I was at, that it is still such a stigma because, like we talked about earlier, there is such a spectrum for every medical condition or diagnosis or situation. And just because someone goes to a counselor to better themselves, to improve their health, to be on top of it, does not mean they're on the brink of like destruction.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that my mental health honestly is and was what it is and was, because I think somebody going through this and hearing that there are just no resources. I mean, you're basically told the sky is purple and the grass is red, and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
You go and you present all of the data and all the information. And like you said, gaslighting to a T. I feel like I've never been gaslit before, and this was like shocking.
Yes.
There's nothing you can say. It doesn't matter what you present. So that could make someone feel crazy in and of itself.
Yes.
You're like, what is going on? And it's obviously having a big impact on your husband's career as well. And so, yeah, it can be heavy. We were already dealing with deployment. We were dealing with some, stressful situations in that regard, and him being away, and then also trying to prep for moving, and then also being denied over this and on this roller coaster. So, the mental health aspect was hard. I will say that I just have such a supportive family and such great friends, and that my husband has been amazing throughout all of this and never blamed it on me, never was mad at me, was so supportive and knew just how absolutely ridiculous this was. So that was, it was hard. And I had different days and moments of like, wow, like I'm the reason we're not going. Like and so, and I am. I mean, it was my situation. However, we know that it was just like absolutely crazy. So it makes us feel better because we're sure in, I mean, I'm sure in who I am. And I'm not I know what my mental health is, and I don't have questions of whether I'm okay or stable or anything like that. So I think that for me was tough, but it wasn't like the end of the world. I
Yeah.
just kind of knew how crazy this was throughout. However, I think somebody that was really on the brink of, maybe they're really depressed, or maybe they're having, different issues, and their situation's different than mine. I think hearing some of the things that I heard throughout this could really throw someone off. One of the things in my denial letter was that I could be at risk of decompensating if I went.
Mm.
And how do you dispute that? Like, that's the most broad, vague. I mean, decompensating can mean anything from like organ failure to just like completely crumbling. How do you say, no, I promise I'm not going to decompensate?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you just can't even, like, there's nothing to say.
Yeah.
So somebody being told they're going to decompensate, I mean, I really hope that the program can just improve on like wording and care and have some bedside manner because yes, if you are just that concerned about people's mental health and you want the best for them, then be careful how you phrase things
Yeah.
because they're already going to feel bad that, this is all kind of dependent on them. And then you're going to say, throw things like that, and there's just no resolution for that? So I think that's really hard. I think there's also a big issue, and we can kind of get more into it later, but like, with how this then kind of interprets the message it interprets to active duty members
Yeah.
and what like situations like this kind of say when they're so encouraged to take care of their mental health and all of that. And so again, we can get into that a little bit later, but
Yeah.
I think
No, I mean,
that's
I like getting into it because I mean, in spouses too, because it makes me think like you were doing what anyone should have. Like, right? Like you were
yeah,
trying to make sure you
absolutely.
were good for yourself, you were good for your patients in the future, like, you know,
Yes.
you were doing what anyone should have, and this is what in a program that is supposed to encourage you to
Mhm.
get the care you need. This is
Right.
how you were
Yeah.
treated. So yeah, I mean, I think now's the perfect time to say anything you want to say.
Yeah. So I think, I think it's a very loud and clear message, at least our experience. Now, again, I don't want it to be just like a whole thing on the whole military thinks this
Anyone.
way, because I truly don't believe that. I do think it comes down to an individual level. I do think the program overall definitely has some pitfalls, but I do think there are people who for sure are more gentle and not stigmatized, all of that. So I do want to say that. I also don't think this is necessarily like a hit on the Air Force, but I do think you just have to be careful because there have been enough things within the military and enough things people have seen and experiences they've gone through that their mental health can really, really struggle. And if somebody who's not even in the military, aka me as a spouse, is affecting my husband's career to the point of, yeah, we're not able to go and you're not going to be able to even state your case. You're not going to be heard, listened to, or even honestly, the AFI regulations aren't even going to be followed and nobody's going to be in trouble for that. Then
Yeah.
that pretty much tells the active duty members that they absolutely should not be getting any sort of mental health care. Keep everything under the table. If anything, pay out of pocket. Be secretive about it. And that's just so sad because what should be encouraged is that everybody who needs any sort of care or even just wants to go to discuss should be encouraged
Yeah.
because this is a very unstable world that we are in. And sometimes deployments, things go awry with those. Sometimes they're extended, and I mean, my husband's squadron that he just went to thought they were coming back in April. I think they ended up coming back in August.
Mm.
Like, so way extended. Kids, you're a single parent half the time. I mean, there's so many different things going on that somebody going to talk to a counselor every other week should not be put on a program where they are now stigmatized in this way that they just, cannot handle life. No,
Yeah.
I would argue a lot of the times those people are self-aware and actually way more healthy and on top of
Better
it.
equipped to handle all
Yeah,
the stuff that you're
exactly.
going to be put through. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, for the active duty members, they should be as mentally strong and prepared as they can be for whatever situation they come into. It's hard on them to be away from family as well. It's hard on them for the things they have to do, and it's rigorous, and it's not necessarily an easy life. And so they should be encouraged. And of course, if someone's totally is unstable and like shouldn't be flying that day or in that season of life, that's understandable. I'm not saying to put anybody in harm's way,
Yeah.
but I think, when you can't even explain your situation or your providers aren't even consulted to actually know what's going on, to just say, well, you struggled with this, so you're, thrown out, where I don't know. They treat kind of everybody that they're in this dire state and, need to be in a mental institute, or
Mhm.
they're, all kinds of
Yeah.
things. And it's like, it's just not that. So
It's not.
Yeah,
And when
it
you're a
is.
professional in the mental health field, it's not hard. It's really not that hard to like assess when people are at that level. So like it's
Exactly.
not hard to know when people are good and not good.
And I think that's another important thing is that, you know what, if a provider is willing to go out on a limb and say in their no, hey, this person's completely stable to
You're
go,
good.
they get the full green light,
Listen to
they're
them.
going to look really bad if this person goes over there and has a severe meltdown issue. You know what I mean? It's going to like, so I
Yeah,
think
it's
they
fear-based.
need to be willing to listen to that because these are professionals who have been doing what they're doing for years and they're not just going to say, I mean, most of the time they have their patient's best interest in mind and
Yeah.
they're not just going to say, yep, go for it if this person is, you know, on the
Yeah,
brink
it
of
shouldn't be.
destruction.
Yeah.
So I think another thing, and one last thing I'll mention on this is that there within the medical group that I was kind of working with, I finally, after trying and trying to talk to anyone outside of this special needs coordinator, got the chance to talk to the SGH. I can't remember what that stands for, but it's a step above the special needs coordinator. And the SGH and the med group commander at the base I was at was about to leave. They were about to leave within the next month to 2 months. So they were really on their way out. They could care less. And it was really, really apparent. And the stigma was just that much more highlighted when I had this meeting because one of the things that the SGH said was she said, well, you know, you had this anxiety towards this situation and you know it could mean like when you go over to England the weather, the gloomy weather could make you like really fall apart. And I said, well, that would be different if I was depressed. And if you read through any of my notes, you would see that's never been an issue for me. That isn't even. And she said, well, it can really, you know, they're kind of one and the same. They can really be
You don't know.
essentially like a package deal. And I'm like, so this is why nobody wants to get mental health care, just so you know. Because at this point, I had gone through it long enough to realize what was going on here. And I said, this is why it's an issue because you go in for one thing, now you're grouped in to now I have depression. Now I'm going to not be able to handle the gloomy weather and I'm going to have to be sent back to Idaho. And it's like, why don't you just read my notes and see what my situation was about? There was absolutely nothing in my file that would have even slightly indicated depression
Yeah.
at all.
And trust your
Um,
providers who had written, who had signed off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so why is the SGH, who's above the SNC, sitting here telling me now that I'm going to be depressed, I'm not going to be able to deal with the gloomy weather? I'm like, I'm from Idaho. The winters are cold. It gets dark at 5 o'clock in the winter,
Yeah.
and I've had
You don't
zero
know me.
issues.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, those types of things don't help the stigma at all.
No, yeah, I'm like, I wonder, I'm like, do they understand like how far reaching these comments, these decisions really, and how many people are actually affected by that in terms of like not seeking healthcare and or trying to be secretive about things that maybe they shouldn't be. But they shouldn't
Right.
certainly should not have to be, feel like they need to be. Uh,
Exactly. And
so
that's
far
one thing
reaching.
too to say is like if you need care, this shouldn't scare you to not get the care. You absolutely need to get the care.
Yeah,
Um, but just
I
be
appreciate it.
aware that you might go through something that is frustrating. And I wish I would have known that, you
Yeah,
know, that I would have approached it differently. I would have gone and, you know, nobody's recording that you're going to counseling if you're going to one source military. Apparently you can talk with the chaplain on base and that's not, you know, noted or documented. So there are ways to do it where you'll still have your autonomy to make your own decisions. But if you're in a really, really tough place, then it probably you know, would make sense to not be going overseas. And that's also fine. That may just not be the best fit for you. And that's where you can really lean into EFMP and be like, hey, I can't go.
yeah.
But I think, again, that's just going along with the spectrum. So that's not
Yeah, and
everybody's
I
story.
think
And everybody can't be thrown in that basket.
no, no, and I think that leads to like also like hearing what you're saying about that. If I appreciate you saying that, like don't let this scare you, but also be prepared. Be prepared to
Yes.
think, tell your story, like and advocate for yourself. And I think that leads us to like wanting to hear, because yeah, I mean, we've heard through this whole story like how much you were advocating for yourself and your family, and how much it seemed like that maybe kind of surprised that guy. Like became a thorn
Hmm.
in his side because you weren't just taking, the no for an answer that so many people do, because like you're saying,
Yeah.
they don't know and that there's anything they can do about it. They don't know that um it wasn't done, it wasn't decided correctly, or whatever, like that rules
Hmm.
weren't being followed or things like that. Or you're just so freaking tired. Like, that's a lot of
Yeah,
work, mental,
it
emotional
is.
energy to do that, especially with the way they were treating you. And then you took it even a step further. So I would love to
Hmm.
hear about that, because I think so few people do that, where like it maybe could have the potential to like really change things.
Hmm.
I hope.
Yes, yes. So I feel like through this whole process, like I said, I mean, through with nursing and my experience there, I've learned a lot about advocating and just being, being being on it with certain things. And I feel like that kind of translated over into this for me, and just advocating really for the first time that I feel like I ever had to in my life in this sense. I think, you can always like stand up for yourself in certain circumstances, but I think really truly advocating I've never really had to do before. And so this was definitely a learning process for me. And through the process, we actually met with, so everything was kind of under the table. Like we met with the acting vice wing commander when certain people were deployed. And so we met with him multiple times, and he tried to help us. Again, this was all outside of the med group commander built and their building, and it's just like such a secretive weird world, but
Mhm.
he was trying to help us. And he actually there he also brought another person that was like an acting for, I can't remember what her role was, but she was really great, and she actually ended up having another active duty member going through something very similar at the exact same time as us. And so she gave that person my information, and we ended up going to dinner with them and getting to know them. And they were kind of going through something similar. I will say their experience was a little bit more intense, and they've been great about saying, hey, you can use our story and kind of what we went through. But basically, we learned kind of next steps through them, because they were trying to go to Australia, and the wife of the active duty member had struggled pretty significantly with her mental health. She was in a good place, but she had fairly recently been hospitalized. She was seeking counseling on a regular basis, a psychiatrist on a regular basis, on multiple medications, things like that. So they were denied at first, which sort of made sense to me in some ways, because there was a lot going on, and I do understand that there is like this safety aspect with it as well. And so kind of understood that, but they were in a really good place at this point, and she had been pretty stable on these meds for years, and she had something that had happened, but beyond that. So I mean, I wasn't actually shocked when they told us the full story and why they were denied. But they actually ended up sharing with us that they were planning to go to Congress if they were fully denied after their appeal, because you get an appeal every time you're denied. So they told us the whole route to go. And then we were actually encouraged by some people higher up as well at the base we were at, to take it to Congress, because it was just so mind blowing to everyone. And so what's crazy is that this couple actually ended up, I believe, I'm fairly certain that the special needs coordinator ended up hearing that they were going to go to Congress if they were denied. And I don't know if that helped push things along, because my case was spanning from like January, and then when I actually got my final congressional letter back, it was, I want to say, end of September. So that was like a 9-month
Yeah.
process, exhausting. So this couple was kind of going through it at a similar time. But anyway, they ended up getting approved to go to Australia after their denial, and they had really great commander as well that had been through something similar and so was able to really help them with their appeal and list out all the AFI regulations of why, because I believe if there's an AFI reg that states something along the lines of if you are able to prove resources are available, then your orders cannot be denied,
Mm.
something like that. So they included that in their appeal and they sent it all over to us afterwards, and it was really good. Of course, I'd already submitted my appeal. I just was learning things too late in the game. But they were approved, and the closest resources to them were 4 hours away. So we were shocked at this point because,
Um,
and so yeah, when we were denied, officially denied, we said, okay, yeah, let's go to Congress. They actually told us how to do it, gave us all the instructions. We went that route. It was a long process. And obviously, if you're working in Congress and all of that, like there's a lot going on. So it takes time to get responses and all that. And eventually, long story short, we ended up getting a response back that, and our case went up to, up the chain of command above like our base and all of that. And then, yeah, on a bigger level, but we ended up getting back a letter that said, once if you ever get this opportunity again to go overseas, you should be like eligible basically, and that you're good to go, and showing stability and blah blah blah, and like just kind of frustrating. It was good because we were like, well, we're gonna hold on to this letter if
yeah.
we ever get an opportunity again and bring this. And but it was kind of too little too late. At that point, we
Yeah.
got that letter at the end of September. Our orders had gone to someone else in June. And not to, I mean, well, to also show kind of the inconvenience it put on that other family. They had like less than a month to move to another country, taking our slot for the patch slot or whatever. And so, I mean, the whole thing was just unfortunate, but yeah, it was really great kind of going that process and learning more through Congress. And I talked to this amazing representative or somebody that helps with all of this, because obviously there's just so much going on. One or two
Of
people
course.
can't do everything. So she was so great. And very supportive and just kind of guiding us and aiding us and all of that. And so she ended up saying, you know what, actually I recommend that you go to DC and you like speak in person to our senators, and I think it was senators, yeah. But anyway, so I'm really excited, hoping to do that and make that kind of an appointment, or make the appointment sooner than later. Um, but yeah, there's been a lot going on. We just moved from
Yeah.
our base to North Carolina less than a month ago, and I'm pregnant and all that. So there's just been a lot going on, but
But when is that
excited to
not
do
true
that.
for military spouses? Which I think is
I
like
know.
kind of the point of like, and then this is all you're having to deal with this on top of it all, and how easy it is to just be
Mhm.
like, okay, fine, I'll just, accept it when it's not right.
Exactly. And we're at a good place with it now, I feel like. But it took a long time to get there because it just felt again just like they could literally care less. Like we could just, I mean, it was unbelievable to try and even like get in contact with people or to have a conversation with this special needs coordinator. I mean, it was just like pulling teeth for every step along the process. So it was so frustrating. And when your husband has gone above and beyond, like I said, he did WIC, that they call the weapons school, and became a patch. And I mean, even when he was living in England before, he went on like an extra deployment that he volunteered for because they needed more people, even though he had just deployed for 6 or 9 months or something like that. And so, I mean, it's hard when somebody's willing to go so hard and do as much as they can. And then, you have a contracted employee that like wants to clock out at 2:30 and you can't even get a hold of them half the time.
Yeah. 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 It's a vast difference between the two. And yeah, this one's affecting this one's ability to do the job.
Right.
I feel like I would just like what? Because this was a lot emotionally,
Mhm.
logistically, like you were doing a lot. Um,
Mhm.
what did you learn about yourself? Kind of dealing with this, but then also fighting it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think through this process, I definitely, I'm really, really proud of my husband and myself for kind of just fighting as hard as we did when we knew that we were being mistreated and that we knew that this wasn't right. Like you said, it would have been easier to fold and just accept kind of that we were being told, there's just no resources and that the crazy things that were being said. But I'm really, really proud of us. I think it was difficult for my husband because within this field, you're so used to taking orders and you're so used to just kind of not that you don't not that you don't stand up for what's right. You do. But um you're just in this world, it's just so different. And so kind of going against the grain was tricky at first for him. And I'm really proud of him for just speaking up and really trying to advocate and doing his absolute best from, across the world. And I'm just
Right.
really proud, honestly, of not in like a cocky way, but I am proud of myself that I really stuck to what I knew was right. And despite not getting the result we wanted, I'm really grateful for everything that I have learned and in ways that we can also help other people. We've had multiple people that have heard about our story reach out and ask, what they would do or what are your rights within this or how would you go about it? So that's been really great. And yeah, we're at peace with it now. And we feel like things do happen for a reason, and as hard as we tried with doors being slammed that hard, we were like there's got to be a reason that this just did not work out.
Yeah.
And so yes, of course it was devastating, but once we found out we weren't going, we actually ended up going to Europe for a month. We just like he was so frustrated. He had a lot of leave saved up and we just went to 7 countries and we
Whoa.
just enjoyed our little European adventure because of course when you go to England, you're like so excited that everything's a 2-hour plane ride or less away,
Yeah.
or flights are $30.
Mhm.
Totally crazy. And so we got to go and do that. And that kind of brought us some closure as well.
Nice.
But yeah, I think we really grew and learned a lot about ourselves and just our sort of tenacity to um come together. We grew in our marriage. It could have definitely separated us more because I'm like, this is my husband's job that's causing me all this stress. Like, I
Hmm.
have to submit my personal medical records to your job. Like,
Yeah.
what? But there were moments of like slight tension, but also mostly just we were on each other's side. So that
That's
was really
beautiful.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love to hear that. I'm glad you guys took the break to enjoy
Yes.
your lives and each other. All right. So we have to kind of start to get us to the finish. You've
Yeah.
said a lot of these things naturally, but and we know, right? We're reiterating not every experience is this, not every phase,
Right.
not every whatever, whatever. But if we were to assume that
Mhm.
there were others out there, because I think it's safe to assume that are having similar experiences and are leading this program in similar ways. What would
Mhm.
be some of the top things that you would want to see happening in the EMFP program to really make sure that it's doing what it should for families?
Mhm. Yeah. So, first, I think this program should definitely be optional. I understand from the military standpoint that they want to protect themselves because there are high costs when you have to move families back from overseas early, prematurely, and, all of that. But I do think that, again, you just can't be throwing everyone into a certain category. So, I really think that it should be an optional program that if you need more help, then and you want that extra care and that guidance, then you absolutely 100% should be able to sign up for this program. I think it would be amazing when someone goes and in processes to a new base to sort of get a rundown of, hey, here's family resources. If your wife gets diagnosed with cancer, or your child has autism, or you're going through something really significant, we have this great resource for you. Please sign up. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of. We're going to help you find the resources you need. We're going to advocate for you. We're going to make sure you end up at a base that works for you.
Mhm.
And then following through on that. So I think that would be crucial to, again, it used to be an option and this just changed. And I, again, don't know if this is just for international, that you're
Mhm.
forced on program or not. I'm on the program now for a good solid 5 years. However, that's another discussion because I got an email last week. I haven't even met with the special needs coordinator in North Carolina yet, but I got an email saying, hey, I was reading that you wanted to disenroll from the program. Here's how you do it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, okay, what? Because I tried to disenroll after I got that letter back from Congress at the base I
Mhm.
was at previously. And they were like, nope, sorry, you have to be on it for
Interesting.
5 years.
Yeah.
So again, another inconsistency. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that would be really huge first and foremost. And then I think also every SNC should be required to get a full picture of the EFMP member's health. There should be an interview and an evaluation every single time if you're going to put someone on this and it's going to impact their life the way that it can truly impacted. And so I think that should for sure happen every single time so that they have that context. So it's not just checking a box of, yep, you're on the program, but no, how am I actually helping and serving you guys? Because this is something that you have to be on. And I think that providers, that work with these individuals should be consulted at that point as well.
Mhm.
And their medical knowledge should 100% not be dismissed. So I think that's another big thing. I think that SNCs should be well versed on resources that are truly available or are not available. And if somebody can prove that there are resources available, then that should be confirmed and not discarded.
Yeah.
So I think that like it should be a program of working together. I think that's kind of another point, is that I think it should be about not you versus me, but be a collaborative effort to work as a team and to find the best scenario for all. Because most of the time, if somebody really needs care, they're 100% going to be, willing to do whatever to get that. And if the
Yeah.
special needs coordinator sees that as well, they're going to be able to help and aid in that way. Versus, hey, I'm bringing you all these resources. I'm not even going to counseling anymore. And this is all available, and you're sitting here telling me there's not a single resource in all of
Doesn't
England
matter.
that's available.
You're wrong.
Right, doesn't exactly. So really just working together as a collaborative and feeling supported in that way, and not, again, you versus me. And then I do think that AFI regulation should mandatorily be accurate. Like, I don't think that if something changes, it should be automatically updated, because if regulations are not updated, then you have active duty members and their families looking at outdated
Yeah.
things that isn't helpful for anyone. So whether or not interviews and evaluations are happening anymore, if that's still on your regulations, then I should have got an interview day one, versus if that's not the case anymore, then update that and I wouldn't even know that was an option. And then lastly, um, let's see. I think that's kind of
All
mostly what
seemingly
I think.
common sense things about like work with the person, work
Yeah,
for the person, for the program that like by definition is supposed to be doing that.
exactly. And then let's just stop the stereotyping.
Yeah.
If you're gonna in the medical world and you're still stereotyping people in 2026, I mean, it's probably not the field for you.
No, and like you were saying earlier,
Which,
like be thoughtful about your language too. Like
yes,
not how you're
yes.
using these like blatantly, yeah, the
You're gonna
decompensating word.
decompensate, girlfriend. You're like,
You're
yeah,
like, well,
it's
I'm decompensated right now because of you.
right. I'm like, this actually was more traumatic than like anything I talked about at counseling. And yeah, this was, now I need to probably go back, honestly.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. But,
No,
um,
but not somebody
yeah,
else
yeah,
might
I'm like,
really need
I'm kidding,
it.
guys. I swear I'm kidding.
No.
Just joking. But no, it's just, yeah, it is what it is.
And then, I always like to, so like, let's picture our folks are listening and maybe they're a new spouse, new active duty spouse. Maybe they're on the program, they're
Mhm.
not. Maybe they're, you know, about to get potential orders to go somewhere else. And thinking whatever they may be thinking as they're listening about this. So, what
Mhm.
are kind of those last little pieces of advice or wisdom that you want to really make sure like people hear and take from this, if nothing
Yeah.
else?
Well, no one's going to fight for you as hard as you fight for yourself. I definitely have learned that. So be your best advocate, take the time to educate yourself and just believe that you're worth fighting for. Especially if you're in the right and you can back it up, then fully back it up. You know what I mean? And stand up for yourself. I think educate yourself as much as you can. I was very naive walking into this, had no clue, and I definitely should have educated myself more. I wish I would have known. So definitely do that. Reach out to people, have your spouse reach out to people within their squadron or within the community to kind of gain insight on this. If you're being told, hey, you need to be on this EFMP program, then before you just sign your life away, go and get some insight. And then also I would say number one, I wish I would have done this before you submit anything when you're, I mean, about to when you know you have to submit medical paperwork, and then if there's anything you want to explain or any insight you want to give, go make a meeting with this person before there's any bad blood, before anybody's mad at anybody or frustrated with anybody. Go make a meeting with them, get your evaluation or interview. At least if they're not going to offer it, basically just say I'm here to give you this context and insight and give full like understanding into your story, because again, you're going to fight for yourself more than anyone, and there's always so much more to a story than just this person went to counseling or this person this or that. So definitely do that. And then I think just I don't know. I think those are kind of some of the biggest things. Just really educate yourself, go in. Oh, yeah, make sure you know what the AFI regulations are or your regulations for whatever branch you're in and see what your rights are within that. I mean, maybe just do more homework up front on these types of things. And then reach out to people. Reach out if anybody has questions, if you find my Instagram or whatever, reach out to me and I would love to send you over just like my appeal or things that I learned or a friend's appeal that was successful, like there's certain wordings and ways and it just becomes really particular in how you state things. And so, yeah, get the help that you need in
Get
that regard. And then the other thing is also though on another level, get the help that you need. I do want to reiterate that if you do need help and if you do need guidance, like don't be ashamed of it. Definitely get it. You're worth it. Your mental health is so important. The world will keep spinning. If your husband's assignment does get changed, that's okay. It might be frustrating, but you matter too, just as much. So get that help. Know that, hey, there might be some things, but hopefully you have a special needs coordinator that wants to work with you and help give you all the possible options and opportunities.
No, I appreciate that last one. Yeah, because that's what it's all about. Like
Yeah,
we all gotta be looking out for ourselves and our family's best interests, whatever they may be. Um,
exactly.
well, Marissa,
And
I'm
also don't hate
so
on the military.
yeah,
Don't, and this is not me hating on
it's
the
not an
military. I have to say,
anti-military. Yeah.
this is not. My husband has absolutely loved his job. He loves the people that he flies with. Like he loves what he gets to do every single day. And, this was definitely something that was really hard. But I think when you look at it in a positive way and you're like, how can we improve things that just aren't really serving
Yeah.
the actual active duty members?
Yeah.
And then, that's where change can occur. So is definitely not a bashing because the military has been so great for him, opened so many doors. We would not have met if he was not in the military. So all good things on that regard. It's just hoping to improve this
Yeah.
program.
And having these kinds of conversations and letting people know these things is an important, one of many important ways of doing it and advocating for yourself and hearing that other people have done it. And yes, it may not have been successful in the way that you had hoped it would be.
Hmm.
But to see that, you know, got some little note, and
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
someone validated that it was not how it should have been. Uh,
Hmm.
so your voices matter. Even
Yes.
if there are people telling you that they don't.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I am so grateful that you reach out to us and so that we can help people, we can help people understand that it's, take the initiative to set yourself up for success, to educate yourself so that you can advocate for yourself, so that you can get what you need, whatever that might be. So I
Exactly.
appreciate you for being on here and telling your story, because I know it'll help so many others. So I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great. And I do hope that people can get even just a little nugget of information that helps them.
A nugget or a little fire to, speak out
Yes,
on whatever you feel you may need to speak out on. Uh,
exactly.
but thank you so much, Marissa, and we wish you so well, as
Thank
you guys
you.
grow your little family. Good luck with
Thank you so
everything.
much.
Thanks again for joining us on the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. We thank you for listening today and hope today's session left you feeling a little more connected or gave you some insight into the experiences of our military and veteran families. Don't forget to check us out at veteranspousenetwork.org to learn more about how our military and veteran families can receive the support they deserve.